What's growing on, gardeners? It's October and gold is literally falling from the sky. We're rich, Dale! We're rich! We're rich! And on today's video, we need to grab it all before it's gone.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
As a gardener, nothing pains me more than when I walk outside to my sidewalk and I see it lined with those big brown paper bags full of fallen leaves and pine needles that people rake up into piles and then throw away. That stuff is literally the best mulch that money can buy, yet it is completely free for your use. And when I say nothing pains me more, I don't mean it literally. I mean, I was playing tug of war with Dale's magic school bus toy today and he bit my hand. That definitely pains me more. However, mentally, just throwing away all of that golden mulch that you can be using around your yard and garden, well, it just pains me to my soul as a gardener. Here's your treat, buddy. And to understand why, you have to know why mulch is so important for your soil. Mulch has 4 primary benefits. Number 1, a mulch layer protects your soil from the elements, primarily sun damage and erosion. If you have unprotected soil, the UV rays from the sun are beating on that soil and effectively sterilizing it, killing the microbiome, all those healthy fungi and bacteria that are living and help the decomposition process in your soil, which keeps it alive and breathing and thriving. Well, they're getting annihilated by the UV rays. When you cover that soil with a thick layer of mulch, you are protecting the beneficial bacteria and fungi that live in that soil. And in addition, if you were to get heavy rain, well, unprotected soil will wash away from rain erosion. But if you have a thick layer of mulch on top, at least 2 to 3 inches thick, that will protect the soil from washout. So it will be less likely to wash away in heavy rain or if you accidentally over-irrigate. Number 2, it helps regulate soil moisture by preventing evaporation from the sun, so your soil will stay moist longer and you don't have to irrigate as much. Number 3, a mulch layer suppresses weeds by preventing new seed that blows around in the air from reaching the soil level and germinating, while also suffocating small weeds that have already germinated. And number 4, it adds organic matter and nutrients to your soil. Your soil isn't some inorganic medium. It is a collection of billions and trillions of fungi and bacteria working in harmony together, decomposing organic matter and keeping that soil alive. So when you add a mulch layer, it feeds that microbiome. It keeps the bacteria and the fungi very happy, so as they decompose that organic matter that you add, well, they are adding and leaching in all of those nutrients while also making it more difficult for pathogenic bacteria and fungi to take over because, hey, population density law, if your soil is healthy and crawling with beneficial bacteria and fungi, well, it squeezes out the room for the pathogens to grow. So not only will you have more nutritious soil that is richer in organic matter and better draining, you will be less likely to have any kind of disease issues with your plants. So now that you understand the benefits of mulching, let me show you its effects. So back in late winter of this year, I planted some new fruit trees in the rear of my property. And when I planted the fruit trees, I placed a nice thick layer of wheat straw mulch that I purchased around the base of the fruit tree. And as you can see, this entire area where I mulched very well, it is virtually weed-free. I have never added to this mulch. This has given me over 6 months of protection because I placed about a 3-inch thick layer of mulch around all of these new things that I planted. But then something happened. We got about 30 inches of rain from a couple of tropical storms back in August and into September, and this washed out a big area of the mulch where nothing is growing. And because of the washout, you can see how in only about maybe a month to 6 weeks, the area is already being repopulated and taken over by weeds in this washout section. I mean, look at it. It is absolutely astounding how this area of limited mulch cover, well, it's just been ruined by weeds. So you can see thick mulch in the back, everything looks great. Then in the washout area, I have to repair this over the winter, unfortunately. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to rake up all of these weeds and place a new thick mulch layer in this section. People ask me all the time, what is the best mulch for your yard and garden? And the answer to that question is anything natural that you can source affordably. I don't care if it's wheat straw, a shredded hardwood mulch, a bark mulch. I don't care if you use lawn clippings, as long as you don't treat your lawn with herbicides. It's all fair game. All I can tell you is what not to use, and you shouldn't use any kind of dyed mulch, a stone mulch, or a rubber mulch. Rubber mulch is literally shredded waste products like tires. You don't want that in your soil. Your stone mulches don't add any organic matter to your soil, so they're of no real benefit. And things like dyed mulch, well, that is literally broken down construction products like pallets, plywood, 2x4s, and then they artificially dye it to make it look like real hardwood, but it is not. But what is the absolute best mulch for your yard and garden? Well, it is overwhelmingly fallen leaves and pine needles. This is what literally makes up the forest floor. When we walk around in a forest floor, we were walking under centuries of decaying pine needles and leaves and other wood products that have fallen from the trees over time. There is no better mulch in nature than leaves and pine needles. So that's why it drives me absolutely crazy when I see homeowners throwing away their leaves and pine needles in the fall and then subsequently going out to a big box store and spending hundreds of dollars on fake dyed mulch in the spring. You're spending money on lousy mulch while you're throwing away gold. So here is your assignment for the week. If you are in an area where your leaf drop and your pine needle drop has already started, I want you to get your leaf blower and your rake, and I want you to start collecting all of the pine needles and leaves that have dropped into a giant pile for you to use as a natural mulch for your yard and garden. And before I say any more, yes, I realize that I have very little fallen leaves and pine needles just yet, but I'm making this video ahead of time because I want this to come out so you don't accidentally throw away all of your leaves first. If I wait until all my leaves and pine needles start dropping, it's going to be too late and you may have already disposed of the leaves and pine needles. And now that we have ourselves a pile of leaves and pine needles, what do we do with it? Well, that depends on your application. If you want to mulch around fruit trees, ornamental trees, landscape, and shrubs, all you have to do is just take the mulch pile and spread it around the bottom of the shrubbery or the trees in roughly a 3 to 4 inch thick layer. And they will work just fine in whole form like this, and we want to basically cover up any areas of exposed soil. And this will be the final result. Back here in my rear property, my peach and citrus trees have been mulched exclusively with the fallen pine needles and leaves from this back tree canopy right here. I didn't buy any of this. This is just what you see made out of the pine needles and the leaves. And it is virtually weed-free, and obviously everything is looking great. I mean, look at those North Carolina oranges starting to ripen right there. Everything is exceeding my expectations. Same thing with this little avocado tree back here. That is growing basically just using fallen pine needles as mulch. It works great. And you can see over here by my fig trees that I've been very careful to collect all of the fallen leaves from the fig trees and use them to mulch the trees themselves, because after all, they are deciduous trees and the leaves make perfect mulch. But what about for your garden beds? Well, for your garden beds, things are a little bit more complicated because I find whole leaves and whole pine needles, especially whole pine needles, to be a little bit more difficult to use in the garden. And that is because they are large and they take a long time to break down and they interlock. This is very advantageous for your trees and for your landscaping, but not so much for your garden beds, because if you were to place all those pine needles and whole leaves on your bed right now, by the time you go to plant in your beds in the spring, they probably will still be there, and you will have to take a rake and pull back all of that mulch because those things will be in the way. So I find the best thing to do is to rake up your leaves and your pine needles and then run over them with your lawnmower and mulch them up really well, or use a mulching tool if you happen to have like a battery powered or an electric or gas powered mulcher. That way you can grind them up finely and then spread them on your beds. That is the perfect mulch for your garden bed. Now, if you find your mulcher or your lawnmower isn't strong enough to chop up pine needles well then segregate the piles. Move the leaves over, move the pine needles over, and only chop up the leaves and use them in your garden bed. Dried up old leaves are the best mulch possibly in existence, especially if you were overwintering your garden beds and not planting in them. And of course, if you don't want to do any of those things, you could always dump them into a composter. Like, you can make this homemade trash can composter that I made, and you can just dump them in there. You can see all my kitchen scraps and old pine needles and grass clippings and things like that. If you want to learn how to make a $20 trash can composter, I will place a link both above and down in the video description. You can make this in less than half an hour. So please, whatever you do not throw away your fallen leaves and pine needles. Use them in your yard and garden as mulch. They are like gold falling from the sky. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video informative and helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in real life in my garden, I have them all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
It's the 15th of the month, Dale, and that can mean only one thing. It is Heartworm Preventative Day. Oh yes, this is the day that Dale gets his Heartworm Preventative. And it is so important that you have your dog on a Heartworm Preventative, because all it takes is one mosquito bite for a dog to get heartworms, and they are fatal. They are deadly. When we did all that work with the shelter for years, most of the strays that would come in were heartworm positive, and they eat little holes in dogs' hearts, and it kills the dog eventually, but usually not directly. They get heart attacks and things like that from the stress and damage to their heart. So if you ever have to put a dog on a heartworm curing cycle, which takes months, the dogs can't go for walks, they can't play, they can't have any fun at all because their heart is so damaged, and it takes months and months to heal and recover. So the best thing that you can do to keep your dog safe is to put them on a very safe heartworm preventative. So we use HeartGuard. It's always worked really well for us, and Dale just loves it. He thinks it's a treat. He thinks it's a treat, and it is.